Hey, folks, before you dig into this episode of We Got This with Mark and Hal, be aware we do discuss WandaVision, which includes spoilers. So if you haven't seen the whole thing, just put a pin in this episode until you've had a chance to watch it in its entirety, and then come on back. We'll be waiting for you. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best Infinity Stone.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcasts should have a theme song. Podcasts should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Hal, this is a first on the show.
Yes.
I am pretty sure that I just met our guest moments ago, but I am certain that we have benefited from the work of our guest on this show many times in the past.
Yes, I think so.
And all of the times that we've gone to the web to research our topics, myriad different articles about all kinds of cool pop culture things that we do on the show. Chances are we have copied the homework and cribbed off of the paper of our guest today, Alisha Grauso. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
This is very exciting.
Yeah, this is a podcasting blind date. Now, Alisha, just so everybody knows, if you don't know, now you will, is a features editor for Screen Rant and also the editorial lead for Atom Tickets. And we've certainly have used Screen Rant quite a bit in our research, both pre-research and when Mark does stuff live and all the things that people don't hear in the podcast where he's like, all right, Ken, cut this out. Hold on a second.
Cut this out. I got to go to Screen Rant for a second.
And then I get to watch him scroll, which is just captivating.
I'm very good at scrolling. And I got to say, Alisha, your writing is wonderful, and it is very difficult for me not to simply make this episode about being a grammar nerd and ask you a million grammar questions. Tell us about your relationship with Marvel, with what got you to where you are right now, like in your fandom and in your writing.
Yeah. So, well, real quick though, on the grammar nerd thing, I have to say dictionary.com made supposedly a word the other day.
No, why?
And I'm still mad about it 2 days later.
Why would they do that?
That's terrible.
It's like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Anyway, still salty about it. Marvel, I mean, it's one of those things that it's kind of like ubiquitous, right? But even before the MCU, you know, people have always kind of known Marvel characters, especially Spider-Man. And I grew up, you know, knowing Spider-Man and liking Spider-Man. And he was always my favorite of the heroes. I never was a kid that loved like villains. It was like, I want to be Darth Vader. I was like, I want to be Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia. And I always loved the nerdy characters, like super sad. But out of all the Ghostbusters, Egon was my favorite. And out of
there's nothing sad about that at all. He's amazing.
And out of all the turtles, like Donatello was my boy because he wore glasses like me and he was a nerd like me. So my gateway drug into Marvel, as I think it is for many kids, was Spider-Man. And then my first real boyfriend in high school, you know, my first teenage love, he was also a huge Spider-Man fan. And so that just kind of cemented it. And then I kind of got away from it in college. You know, you grow up, you get a little bit older. And that was that time period where it was kind of before the modern superhero movies started to come out. And the ones that came out in the 90s were really not great. Yeah. Most of them, they were a little bit ahead of their time. And not to get too terribly personal here, but I suffered my first bout of depression in college. And I didn't know what it was. Like, I grew up in a small town, a country town. You know, this was still back before like we openly talked about this stuff. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I was just being lazy because I didn't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And finally, my sister, who was we lived in a house together, two other girls. Finally, my sister was like, I don't think this is normal. And I was like, I don't either, but I don't care. But I also kind of don't care that I don't care. And I went from being like a former straight A honors college student to really struggling in classes. And the first Spider-Man movie was one of the first things that I did where I actually like left the house. And something about that movie just clicked for me. And I realized it was the first time in what felt like years, but it really probably only been like weeks, maybe months, that I felt something again. And it rekindled my love of Spider-Man and just reminded me that superheroes really do matter. Like they matter and they can help people and they can heal people and they can save people. And I always read comics. I was definitely more of a Marvel fan. I read both Marvel and DC and a few others, but I was definitely more of a Marvel fan just because, again, I kind of naturally gravitated more toward their hopeful, uplifting, and a little bit more, kind of realistic. They're not mythical gods. They're somebody like Peter Parker who's like, they're not F-ups like Peter Parker, who, which I appreciated. Good, the cats are fighting over the cardboard box, so I'm sure that won't be picked up on.
Look, I get it. Hal and I have fought over a cardboard box, and it almost ended this podcast.
Yeah, that was our second episode, is who's going to get this cardboard box. And it did not end well. It didn't even end at a tie. That's how bad it was.
So that's how I kind of grew up with it. And so really it's been kind of Spider-Man all throughout. Like he's always been, my favorite. But through him, and again, with him as kind of the entry point, that's how I got to love all of, a lot of the other Marvel characters too. And I do love some DC characters. It's just that Marvel, I always found I related a little bit more to those characters.
Yeah, there is a grounded aspect to Marvel in that it feels more like it's planted in an actual world.
Well, yeah, you're in New York. You're not in Gotham City or Metropolis.
Yeah. And you touched on the fact that they're not gods. They are all, every single hero is imperfect in one way or another. They have some fatal flaw that doesn't come from a weakness to radioactive material from their exploded home planet, but it's fear or don't have any money or just pick whatever, haunted by something. It doesn't necessarily have to, Spider-Man is in the mold of a Batman in that he suffered a great loss that kickstarted his superhero journey in addition to getting bitten by that spider. But more than that, he not only has to deal with being a superhero and having that responsibility, but also having no money and getting through high school and then college and then never being able to afford his life. And that is something we can all identify with. And it brings us closer to
a superhero with bills.
Yeah, I think it's also that aspect too of, a lot of people have been like, well, being a superhero causes so many problems, and because he has to bail on Mary Jane all the time and he has to miss out on dates and things that they're supposed to do. And why doesn't he just not, if he hears the siren, why doesn't he just skip it? Or why doesn't he just ignore it? And I was like, think of how many times somebody has put an assignment in your lap or your boss has asked you to do one extra thing, how often you've said yes and how rarely you say no because you feel obligated to do it. And that's just like a stupid spreadsheet. So, when it comes to like the choice is I go on this date with Mary Jane or someone might die. So that's kind of relatable too, is that intense guilt to feel like you can't say no to anything. I was like, oh, that's relatable, Peter Parker.
And they blow it up brilliantly in him because every time he ignores the siren, it would be a reminder of the first time he ever ignored a crime, which led to the death of his uncle. So every time he doesn't answer the call, somebody's Uncle Ben is going to die in his head. So he's compelled, just like that is one of the more interesting things about Batman as a character is he's trying to save everybody because he knows what it was like when his parents died. You could either say he's trying to avenge the death of his parents or trying to prevent it from happening to anybody else. But that guilt is a motivator.
I have to admit, I like all of the other characters in the Bat family more than I like Batman.
That's fair.
I'm so mad we haven't gotten a Nightwing or Batgirl movie yet.
Yes.
I'm not sure there's anybody out there that has the right butt for Dick Grayson. Just throwing it out there. They have to have
there will be implants.
A lot of squats, the pads in the suit.
Get a Schumacher seat immediately.
Yeah. But put nipples on the butt this time.
I want to see a Bat Horse movie. That's the only one I want to see.
I'm sorry. What is Bat Horse?
It's a 1950s. In Silver Age, like there were all the Kryptonian animals. So you get like Streaky the cat and Crypto the dog. And there's a horse there. I think Supergirl had a horse.
Well, they're doing the DC Super Pets movie, aren't they?
Are they?
Yeah, they're doing DC Super Pets
is
movie.
Noggin doing it? Or like, it's going to actually be a grown up movie?
I don't know if it might be animated.
Yeah.
My turn to scroll. I'll look.
I hope it's going to be at least minimally animated and it's not going to look like a nature documentary. They're like, no. We got to make these seem real. We're not going to animate them out.
Oh yeah. It's going to be
just going to be Morgan Freeman narrating.
It's an action comedy animated. Superman's dog teams up with a flying cat to stop crime while Superman is on vacation.
Yes.
Amazing. I'm in. But talking about the movies and stuff though, I think X-Men was groundbreaking, the movies. And then Spider-Man, I think, was even more groundbreaking still just because it really elevated the storytelling. And also I think I wrote a video essay on this a couple of years ago, but I think we really underestimate the way Spider-Man moves on screen was really different than it wasn't just like the punch, kick, pow of most superheroes. Like he was doing things that we'd never seen before. And I think that elevated it too. And what was possible with CGI at the time, because that was still kind of in the early days of superhero CGI. And
you're talking Toby era, right?
Yeah. Sam Raimi, Toby era. And I will say that sometimes the CGI on Spider-Man can still get a little wonky just because he's one of those characters that he doesn't move like a human. It all has to be CGI. But then the Marvel Cinematic Universe came along, and I really have a lot of respect for what they did, because this should not have worked. Like, just the amount of planning and the foresight and the collaboration and the way that they got so many personalities. And Hollywood has a lot of not necessarily difficult personalities, although it does, but a lot of creative people. When you have creative people, they have their own ideas about how they want things done. And that Marvel was able to get so many filmmakers and so many writers all together to make this giant, cohesive, interconnected universe with the Infinity Stones, linking the first 3 phases. It is insane to me that they set out to say, we're going to basically do the comic book format in movies with the overarching event and then all the tie-ins. And they did that. They did exactly that. And that just still blows my mind. Like, I really don't think we fully appreciate, even as much as we appreciate Marvel, I don't think we still fully appreciate everything they pulled off.
What's stunning that you've got no movie studio in history took all of their movies and connected them. You know what I mean? MGM in the 1930s was not connecting all of their musicals and dramas. And like, you're not going to see James Cagney in,
that was it.
Yeah. That's one thing I love. And they tied them together with our topic for today, as you mentioned, well segued, by the way.
Trying back in there.
To the Infinity Stones. And that's what we're here to talk about. For those who need a quick refresher, the people of the world listening, I will quote Wong from the Infinity War film. From the dawn of the universe, there was nothing. Then, boom. The Big Bang sent 6 elemental crystals hurtling across the virgin universe. These Infinity Stones each control an essential aspect of existence. Hal, tell us about the stones.
Oh, well, you got time, mind, space, power, reality, and soul. The Soul Gem was actually the first one to ever appeared in Marvel Comics in 1972, I think. But they're most known for Jim Starlin's run with Thanos Quest, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War. But what the MCU did brilliantly, and we could have the discussion in either realm. It's really about the stones themselves. But they managed to get the idea of the stones without having to deal with people. Like, Collector is involved, but you don't have the gardener, the runner, the champion, which is where Thanos finds them. He finds people who have hyper-focused on one thing using the stones, and he goes and collects them all, and that leads into more hijinks and hilarity that the MCU manages to lift bits and pieces of it to still bring the spirit of the comics in while doing it in a fresh way. And they found I thought, a really good way of weaving in all of the stones into the movies, including the first one we see, which is the Tesseract in Captain America, the First Avenger.
It's like every MacGuffin in all of the Marvel movies turns out to be an Infinity Stone of some sort. Even the Ether, which is not remotely a stone.
No, that was the one thing I was like, okay, I have a quibble with the...
The Ether felt like they were trying to really... No, this is one of the Infinity Stones too. And you're like, come on, guys.
Yeah. And they did, I will admit, they fudged some of the stones, like with the Ether being the reality stone. Like, I don't really see how this is warping reality. She just her eyes just go black. Like, I'm not really... Like, some of them were really clearly defined. And it was funny because I feel like you can tell when the writers were like, yes, I can take this idea and I can build the entire movie around it that works. It fits neatly into this, like the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Perfect. Thor 2. Yeah, okay. It'll be some red flowy stuff that Jane Foster gets.
Yeah.
It's... I'm like, oh, okay, that's all right.
Let's start breaking these down then. Let's go one by one. Let's start with the Ether. The Ether is the reality stone, theoretically, in gas. I guess everything has a solid, a liquid, and a gas form, right?
Yeah.
The Ether, what it does in the film, it does something completely different. What traditionally in the comics has the reality stone done? Do you guys know? Like, I know it does something completely different in the first Infinity War movie than it does throughout all of Thor: The Dark World. At no point in Thor: The Dark World does someone
yeah.
just say, now I'm going to change the reality around me and use it to trick people into thinking left is right, right is left.
Yeah. They've changed a little bit in the comics. They can be a little bit, some of them a little, it's almost a little bit like the movies. Like they can be a little bit like Batman's utility belt sometimes, where
Sure.
it's like,
Shark repellent bat spray.
yeah. And you're like, I'm not sure if this, like, oh, we need this plot point to happen. This stone can do this now. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. There does seem to be a lot of that.
Yeah. But they function pretty much exactly as you would imagine them to function, but they've as with many things in the comic books that are these kind of grander abstract concepts, they sometimes suit the story.
Right.
Rather, it's like not the story suiting that element, but the other way around. At least as kind of I've gotten from it when I've read the comics, but Hal may feel differently.
No, I agree with you. I think the one thing that's similar in the movies and the comics is that the Collector is in possession of the Reality Stone when Thanos comes for it. It is really, first of all, in Dark World, I thought the Ether was the Soul Stone. That was the thing that made the most sense. It possessed, it possessed someone. It
gets your
sort
soul.
of like soulish, but it didn't function at all in that film, which again, a testament to the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that film, which is certainly in the bottom 3 for many people, it's their bottom film. It's probably between that.
Honestly,
Iron Man 2 and Hulk.
Hiddleston as Loki was like the only.
Exactly. Anything they did together was great.
Yeah.
The rest of it could go. But that movie became super important because of Endgame. It actually went back and made it a little bit more enjoyable and certainly made it more important. But yeah, the Reality Stone, you're never really clear on what exactly it does. Certainly in the movies, he uses it just for illusions. But it doesn't seem like anything that he does is permanent until he uses it to transform rocks into bats or, it works. It seems to work well in concert with other stones. It enhances the abilities of the other stones.
It's interesting. I had a weird little theory, as I was writing a piece the other day that you may have read, but possibly not. And I know it's not a theory that is going to pan out, but it was just like an interesting parallel is that a lot of the characters in WandaVision are now kind of the human versions of the Infinity Stones. Like Wanda basically is like her, like she basically does what the Reality Stone should do, have done in the movies, but literally never did anything other than, again, possess Natalie Portman. And then you have, like there's Agatha Harkness, who I guess she would be kind of the Soul Stone because she can warp people's minds and take them over, so I don't know. There's a couple different parallels. I saw a lot of maybe like the Space Stone and Monica Rambeau because of all her cosmic connections. So yeah, it's just funny that in the MCU, some of the stones are very clearly defined and other ones are like, it's does reality stuff. Well, whatever, we'll figure it out. It's
cinematically, the powers seem to get moved, either added or taken away. You mentioned Wanda, even Wanda's power of getting into people's minds that she exhibits in Age of Ultron. It's like, hey, Wanda Maximoff, you mean the lady with the Russian accent who can mess with your mind? No, the lady with the American accent who can throw stuff around with red energy. Yeah. Wait, that's the same person, right?
Exactly. It's, I don't know. It just makes me laugh because Marvel, I will say that Marvel's figured out, and this is, I think, what they've done so well is they figured out what really drives the story, and it's the character. So they kind of hand wave the science stuff, like the whole time heist thing in Endgame. They're like, it's a quantum realm stuff, whatever. It's quantum realm. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, just, you don't need to know the details. They're just going back in time. That's all you need to know. Like,
I love that. Don't
think too hard into this. And that's kind of what they did with the Infinity Stones too. And they're like, it does, has some powers. It's bad. It's very dangerous. Just don't touch it.
Exactly. Just don't touch this or you'll blow up like that lady in the Collector's office.
Nobody's supposed to be able to physically touch an Infinity Stone. And that was a hugely important part of Guardians of the Galaxy, that Peter Quill could touch it for at least a few minutes and not die. But then other people just pick up Infinity Stones and they're chill. So like, no.
Yeah, the power sets are all over the place in this universe. I can't tell what is the threshold at which you can actually touch one of these things. But before we dig into any more of them, what are we looking for here? Are we looking at the stone that is most important plot wise? Let's say we're keeping it to the movies for now because the comics are so widespread. I think we can draw from them, but to have a concentrated version might be better to stick in the cinematic universe.
Yeah, most of these are MCU.
Universe. Yeah.
So we're talking about its maybe importance to the overall plot, including the movies it's been in, plus the power. Is it which one you would like to have? How are we attacking
prettiest
this?
color?
For me, I would do most important to the MCU. And that is, for me, there's only one stone. I mean, the rest were important, obviously, for different reasons, but there's only one that's been kind of the linchpin for a lot of things, which I can reveal now.
Yeah, let's wait. Let's go through them. I think I know which one you're talking about. So let's shift to a different one. Let's talk about the Power Stone from first appearing in Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously, it's oh my God, I can't remember his name.
Ronan.
Thank you. Ronan the Accuser attaches to his giant hammer.
My boy Lee Pace.
Yes.
Love him. Yeah.
It serves well as a MacGuffin. You get a sense of how powerful it is right away. I mean, in terms of what it can do, independent of any other stone, it's probably the most dangerous sort of by itself.
And that was kind of the only movie I feel like where they really clarified how dangerous the stones were, because then the danger transferred to Thanos. Like the stones kind of became secondary. It was like Thanos was the danger, which made sense. But Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like, was the one movie that was really focused. And that was also the first movie we got the first explanation of the stones in too.
Yes.
From the Collector.
Yes.
So I feel like that was the movie that really set up like, oh, these things are like reality, like universe shattering, powerful artifacts. This is bad.
And only two characters at that point that you know of are looking for all of them, one being the Collector and the other being Thanos. I think at this point you've already, we haven't had Ultron yet, so we haven't seen the scene with Thanos grabbing the gauntlet and saying, oh, fine, I'll do it myself. But we've already been introduced to him at the end of the first Avengers. Just, you know that he wants the Tesseract for some reason. And then I think that's when we pretty much realized, oh, this is the Space Stone. You sort of figured that out in First Avenger also. I didn't realize they do a very good job, they did a good job on me in the Avengers of sort of the look at this hand, which is the Tesseract. And you don't even realize that he's also carrying the Mind Stone with him in that scepter. I just didn't even think about it until later on. But
it is crazy that Loki had 2 Infinity Stones at one time.
But I feel like if any character is just going to be like, yeah, you should absolutely give me control of the Mind Stone and the Space Stone. Loki is definitely the character I would entrust that with. But what's interesting is that after the fact, Marvel released a book or it's on their site or something, but it's canon that because a lot of fans were like, okay, like the whole jump from Loki, like, sure, he was a real jerk in the first Thor movie. Like he did some awful things. But there's a big jump from like having, familial beef, like a love-hate relationship with your brother and like working through, find out you were adopted in a really bad way and literally trying to invade and destroy the world. And Marvel confirmed that he was actually under the influence of the Mind Stone and the Scepter because he didn't actually know it was a Mind Stone.
Interesting.
That's great.
He thought it was a scepter that could control minds, but he did not realize there was an Infinity Stone in the scepter, and it was slowly influencing him as well. Which is why, because a lot of people, the Avengers movie, when you first see Loki, he does not look well. Like he's pale and he has the circles under his eyes, and it's like, oh, you need to lie down, sir. Like these should probably not be staging like global invasion. You should probably like take a knee. And that was part of it too. It wasn't made fully clear in the movie because of things that had to be cut, but that happened too. So he technically carried both, but the one was working on him as much as he worked on it and used it too.
I want to go back just a little bit and talk about, because you mentioned the Space Stone, which is the Tesseract from Captain America onward. A lot of these stones, to my mind, being not a huge reader of the comics, but a big fan of the MCU, a lot of these stones have a very specific function. The Time Stone has a very specific function. The Soul Stone has a very specific function. I, for the life of me, cannot tell the difference between what the Space Stone does and the Power Stone does. Basically, they're just, in my mind, they're just tiny sources of giant energy. They all are. That you can shoot that energy as a weapon using most of these, right? Like,
I mean,
he uses his staff and that shoots as a energy weapon when he comes back at the beginning of, I don't even remember which movie it is.
But there's a difference.
The difference, it seems to me, is I can shoot energy at you, but which stone is that energy is coming from determines what color that energy I'm shooting at you is, but it's still going to knock you down.
There's that. Although the scepter shoots blue because they basically put blue gels over it for you theater geeks out there. Essentially, they're all batteries, right? So you can power weapons theoretically off of any of them because they're the source of power. But what they each do on their own, if you are not using them as a battery, is completely different. The space stone moves you around through space. It allows you to, that's what the runner has in the comics that allows him to win all of his races. It's essentially cheating by moving himself through space quickly.
Oh, gotcha. So it's like that's the teleporting that Thanos is doing is space stone based.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Endgame, the whole setup for the Loki series, which is going to introduce the Time Variance Authority, is him seeing the space stone at his feet, grabbing it, and then using it to teleport himself away. So he obviously away from the Mind Stone, or is aware of what it is because Thanos has told him. He knows how to use it and uses it to escape.
Side note, though, I will say I'm very excited for the Loki series because I really feel that the MCU has done him dirty to this point. In the comics, he's crazy powerful. Like crazy powerful. Like I can't remember what run it was, but the Silver Surfer basically said, like admitted, like Loki could destroy a planet if he wanted to. Like that's how powerful he is. And you saw a little bit of his magic in the very first Thor movie during the battle with like the frost giants, like a lot of his like illusions and stuff and his kind of trickster ability. Yeah. And then they kind of turned him into just a con man. And I love him. And don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. I love Tom Hiddleston in the role. I think he's fantastic. But in terms of his power set, they really, really nerfed him. And I understand why, because the Thor movies are Thor's movies, not Loki's movies, even though, let's be honest, really Loki's movies. Like, like, let's be honest, like nobody's really watching for Thor. We were watching for Loki, at least the first two movies.
Yes.
But so it's interesting because it's like in the comics, he could have teleported and done that without the Tesseract, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens because now he's in the clutches of the Time Variance Authority.
Is the Time Variance Authority, that's like the Royal Chrono Patrol? What is this?
Yeah, so they are,
cops.
So they're basically, they're like basically literally everything Loki does, like where he'll bounce around timelines and he has the time stone and he's survived death like 37 times in the MCU, or well, really only twice, but they don't like that. They don't really like when people start messing with timelines, because things go awry. So they're not going to love him. And I imagine they might have a problem with Scarlet Witch down the road, but yes. So yes, time cops.
Okay. That makes more sense now.
I love that we completely got off of the Power Stone.
Yes.
Which is where we started.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Power Stone some more. That
very
is
powerful, very purple.
Very purple, very powerful. Ronan wants it through the whole movie. It's in an orb and then he puts it in his big battle axe.
His hammer, yeah.
That one's easier because it's just a little bit, it's pure, it's basically pure power. Like you saw there was the kind of flashback or interlude scene where it showed was it Celestials, the one slamming down the Power Stone, the staff, and it just kind of obliterated all the land in front of him. So the Power Stone is pretty much the most straightforward in terms of what it can do. It's literally just pure power. It's just very pure, destructive power. And it's a little bit different in the comics, but in the MCU, it's like just pure power.
Yeah.
Can I throw out a theory and see what you think of it?
We love theories.
So obviously the stones are all different colors than the gems in the comics. They're all, it's the same, I think, array of colors, but done differently. Yeah. Except for the purple. I think there's just a white one in the comics, maybe.
Yeah.
But do you think that it was not a coincidence, but planned that the stone that can eat planets is purple, which is the same color as Galactus, his armor? Is it possible when he appears, because we know Fantastic Four is coming, which means at some point Galactus will become the big bad or just a giant being that you're going to have to deal with at some point. Is there any relation? Or am I going crazy that they said that they made that purple just in case at some point we get Galactus back? Everybody knows that that's his color.
I would not be surprised, but I think this is probably more one of those cases where it was coincidence, but then later on, after like fans are like, oh, it's Galactus, Marvel's gonna be like, yeah, Yeah, we did that. We totally did that on purpose.
We were way ahead of you the whole time.
Marvel's done that a lot, where like retroactively stuff that fans wanted to see or that fans theorized or like were speculating about, like the whole Loki being under control of the Mind Stone thing. Marvel's like, yep, you're right. Yes, absolutely planned it to work out that way.
You're welcome.
So we've talked a little bit about the Space Stone. Talked a little bit about the Power Stone. We eliminated the Reality Stone, right? We eliminated the Reality Stone.
You want to do the Soul Stone next?
Because it's, I was going to say, let's jump into either the Soul Stone or the Time Stone. Let's go with the Soul Stone.
Just get your Soul Stone. Just let it shine through.
We have not seen the last of the Soul Stone. Have we seen the last of any of these stones?
Yeah.
They were destroyed essentially at the end of, or they were destroyed by Thanos at the beginning of Endgame, right?
Although, if you subscribe to like physics, first law of thermodynamics,
I get the magazine.
First law of thermodynamics says energy cannot be destroyed, only transferred or transformed.
Yes.
So the energy is still there, and WandaVision has proven it, basically. So I think the energy of these stones are all still out there, but I don't think we'll necessarily see like the Infinity Stones again, as they were, because it's just lazy storytelling. It's just stale storytelling. And I think Marvel's like, we've done that. We've told the space stuff, the Infinity Stone. Now we're moving to the mystical multiverse portion of the MCU.
So we will probably get to see that pocket dimension again. That the Soul Stone. Oh,
you mean like the Soul World? And
that Soul World. And because that's the Soul Stone's other job, is the portal into that dimension, right?
Are you talking about when he visited baby Gamora after the snap? Everything. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, that was the theory for a while, is that they were all trapped in the Soul Stone, or were they all trapped in the quantum realm where Ant-Man? That was a theory before Endgame came out. Oh, they're all with Ant-Man, and he's the one who's going to spring them loose. I'm glad they didn't go that way.
Yeah.
Right.
They just sort of made them all disappear. But that is classically, there have been characters, including the Silver Surfer's soul, that get trapped inside the Soul Stone. So it's possible that one might exist somewhere. So that might be if any of them are going to be able to reform, it would probably be that one that can do it on its own.
Would not be surprised if we saw that come back into play somehow with Mephisto, since his entire thing is harvesting souls and keeping them in his realm.
Yeah.
So, and as we all know, literally everybody thought Mephisto, or hoped or prophesied that Mephisto would show up in WandaVision. He did not, which was not surprising.
Yeah.
I feel like he has to show up at some point, and he's all about, souls.
I'm glad he didn't show up.
Yeah.
Somebody made a good point, which is that they do a very good job, if it's Thor's movie, to not make it somebody else's. Like, this is WandaVision. It has to be about Wanda and Vision. And when you bring in Mephisto, or if you bring in Reed Richards, then it becomes about that rather than about specifically dealing with the grieving process, which I don't know how many people appreciate. It also becomes
about undermining Agatha Harkness as the villain.
Yes.
And we have very few complicated, complex female villains in Marvel. And I don't think we have any female characters in the MCU that are, because Agatha is not a pure villain. She's a mentor to Wanda in the comics. And so, and she kind of had hints of that in this. So I think we'll see her again. And so it was great to have her as just the kind of the antagonist, but not a villain. And a very complex like that.
Yes. I'm excited to see her. Just knowing that Catherine Hahn is there and can age with the role. Give me her as Franklin's nanny in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'll be perfectly happy with that. That's a fun, just sort of journey where that character goes on to.
Yeah. There's also a theory now too that, that in this could be how maybe the Soul Stone or something. Again, I don't think we're going to actually see the stone, but I think we might see things play out that are kind of replace them as the next kind of tentpoles of the MCU in the next phase. There's a theory that Billy and Tommy are trapped in Wanda's kids from WandaVision are trapped in the dream realm, in Nightmare's dream realm. But that could also be, they could also be in something like that Soul World or a different, dimension. So that could be how it comes back into play too.
Yeah.
You said something before that I think is fascinating because I'm not a big comic books person. I love the MCU movies. The idea that the first 3 phases were about the Infinity Stones and we're about to enter the realm and multiverse jumping series of movies that both excites me and then I think it's going to be very cool, and terrifies me and then I think it's going to confuse the crap out of me, because I had enough trouble just keeping up with how the ether was a stone. So now that we're also going to be dealing with, well, it died in this timeline, but we're going to jump over to this timeline now.
It's not necessarily timelines, but different dimensions. So
see, this is me not knowing any of this stuff, Alisha. I don't know what to do.
So
I'm so scared.
There are definitely different timelines, but like I try to explain on like different timelines. So like alternate timelines, alternate realities, and like parallel dimensions, like those are all something different.
They're all different things.
Where the multiverse is basically, these are all universes, but kind of like parallel universes all stacked together.
Yeah.
But not necessarily different timelines. So we might meet different versions of different characters, but I don't think Loki will mess with time a lot in Loki, his series. But I think like Doctor Strange won't be as much the weird timeline stuff as it will be like, he'll hop to this dimension. He'll meet a different version of Scarlet Witch where, something like that.
Well, he also doesn't have the Eye of Agamotto anymore.
Yeah. So
let's talk about
the time stone.
Right. Let's talk about the time stone now. The Eye of Agamotto, which is the stone that can control time. One of the ones that in my mind is pretty easy to comprehend what that stone does.
Yeah.
Yes. If you eat an apple, you can make the apple go back to whole, where you can rot it. It's also, he's wearing it because he's the sorcerer. It's worn by the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. That's who is the caretaker of the time stone. And why it's such a big deal in Infinity War when he willingly gives it up. It not only makes no sense because he refused to hand it over or use it. I think he tried to use it actually at the beginning of Infinity War. That was one of the complaints, is why didn't he ever try to use it? He did at one point, but he couldn't get it open before Ebony Maw could sort of trap his hands. But him willingly giving it up is the only reason why Bruce Banner is able to get the time stone in Endgame, because that tells the Ancient One that there's a reason why she needs to give it up as well.
For their one job being to control that stone, that thing changes hands a lot and is destroyed by the end of all these movies.
See, it's interesting because for my money, the time stone is one of the most powerful and most important stones in the MCU.
Yes.
Because of just the huge impact it has on the major Infinity, Gauntlet storyline. And that was the moment that you just said, how that in Infinity War, where I was like, oh, it's going to be fine. I don't even need to know what happens in the next movie. Like, obviously I knew it was going to be okay because it's Marvel.
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is okay. He's got this. He knows he already saw what's going to happen. This was the step that needed to happen in his, 14 trillion or however many realities he saw. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the time stone, even though he's crazy powerful on his own, as Loki says in Thor Ragnarok, when they're standing outside the nursing home where he left Odin, and he's like, well, how was I supposed to know this would happen? I'm not a witch. Yeah. So it indicates that like Doctor Strange isn't a witch, Loki isn't a witch, they're sorcerers and they're mages and they're different. Well, Loki's kind of a mage sorcerer, Doctor Strange is a sorcerer, but seeing into the future without the time stone isn't really one of his abilities. And as the protector of the Sanctum Sanctorum, it's kind of important for him to be able to see and monitor threats.
Yeah.
And will he still be able to do that without the time stone?
Right.
Which that's going to be really interesting, because that is one of the most powerful stones in the MCU, I think.
Yeah. And it leads us directly into WandaVision, because it creates the trauma of her. I mean, great moment in that film also is you get this incredibly emotional moment where she destroys the Mind Stone to protect everyone. And you see their story sort of come to an end or go to a new place. His body is gray. So anybody who is a comics fan and read a lot of West Coast Avengers like I did as a kid knows, oh, that's what he looks like when he comes back in the comics. He's just, the White Vision is going to come at some point. But then to have Thanos use the Time Stone, and that is the only time he uses it once. I think the other stones he uses multiple times. That's the only time he uses the Time Stone, is to restore it so he can rip it out of Vision's head. So she has to watch him die twice, once at her own hand and once in a way she can't control. And that kicks us into WandaVision.
Yeah. We've talked about all the stones except for the Mind Stone then, haven't we?
Yes. I think we've talked about everything. The Mind Stone, this is leading us to, I mean, this thing, The Mind Stone is both.
Wait, before we talk about the Mind Stone, should we take a break?
Yes, let's take a break.
Let's take a break. We're going to take a break. Everybody take a break. If you have a time stone, don't use it because otherwise you won't hear from all of these wonderful things.
We Got This with Mark and Hal is brought to you in part by Fortnite. Hal?
Yeah. Folks, if you know anything about Fortnite, you'll know that every season there's some insanely cool story and map changes. Over the past few seasons, we've seen everything from the island flooding to the legendary black hole. I was there when the rocket launched. Were you? In this season, the 0 point has been contained, but reality collapsed in the process, restoring a natural balance to the island. Craft weapons, hunt wildlife for food, and do everything it takes to survive. And I have survived. I've gone back-to-back victories in duos, along with the producer Ken Plume. We both have our winner's umbrellas. I'm using it on a couple of my skins when I drop in. And also back-to-back squad victories. But I'm not here to brag about it.
Sounds like you are.
A little bit.
Yeah, brag away. I don't know what any of that means.
Well, I'm going to tell you, those of you in the know, that picking up the Battle Pass lets you run wild with the likes of Lara Croft and Teen Titans Raven. Jump into Fortnite now to experience it all. I'll be waiting for you, and I've been crafting weapons for a while.
Oh. Go to fn.gg/season 6 and check it out.
I hope you didn't use your time stones. This is the honor system.
We'll know. No, we will know, Hal. We will find out.
We did.
We have the other 5 stones. So if you use the Mind Stone,
we're not sure to use them though, because as we've established, we're not fully clear on their functions yet.
I'm just surrounded by this red ether. I cannot figure out what to do with it or even what it does. But Natalie Portman's here with me and her eyes just turned black. Is this bad?
Maybe you should leave for a little while. Go for a walk.
Should I go outside?
Let's go for a walk. Just go for a walk. See what happens. Fine.
All right. Let's talk about the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone, of course, is the stone both inside Loki's scepter, as Hal mentioned before. Mm-hmm. It's the big misdirect. Loki's looking for the Tesseract, but his staff has the Mind Stone all along. And it later, of course, becomes the stone in the middle of Vision's forehead.
And gave us Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
And
children of the Mind Stone.
Technically, Monica Rambeau.
Yes.
This is the most, I think, for my money, the Mind Stone is the most important to the MCU.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because it saved the day like the Time Stone did, or because it helped set up the MCU like the Space Stone did, the Tesseract, but because it's responsible directly for so many superheroes.
So this I didn't know.
Marvel too.
How has the Mind Stone? Because really, outside of Vision, I didn't know this whole Children of the Mind Stone thing about Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. I didn't know.
So wait, how's Captain Marvel from the Mind Stone?
Or she was, oh no, maybe not Captain Marvel. That was the Space Stone.
The Space Stone's involved. That was the Tesseract. That was the engine that exploded.
But the Mind Stone, that whole thing, like her being birthed from the Mind Stone, that's pure MCU. That's not her comic book story at all.
Right.
So that's purely MCU, which is interesting because now it looks like they're retconning. I was like, are they saying she's had her powers inherently since she was born? Because that sounds like mutants. That sure sounds like mutants to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it, you got Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, technically even kind of Monica Rambeau, because it was Wanda's hex field in WandaVision with the cosmic energy radiation that warped Monica, which is funny because I called it, because the minute she passed through that barrier, I was like, I bet this is how she gets her powers. And then Darcy said cosmic background radiation. I was like, that's it. That's how she gets her powers. And then sure enough, it was like the next episode, they're like, oh, this is a weird glitch and you're in the X-ray. I'm like, touched it, called it. So that's at least 3, 4, if you include Vision, like Westview Vision.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
But really 5, if you include the Vision, all 3 versions of Vision, really. The Mind Stone had something to do with it. So you technically have 6 different superheroes, 7, 8, if you count Billy and Tommy, who comic book fans know that they grew up to be Wiccan and Speed in the comics. And Wiccan in the comics is crazy powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Mind Stone has either been directly or indirectly involved for the creation of at least 8 heroes, powered people in the MCU.
But aren't Speed and Wiccan also shards of Mephisto?
Yes, but not sure how that's going to work in the MCU. Like,
Right.
I think that's why everybody thought Mephisto was showing up. So in the comics, Mark's just like, yes.
I'm just gathering all of this. After a big meal, I know about some shards of Mephisto. I can tell you that much.
I know so this is why everybody thought he was going to show up, right? Because in the comics, Wanda creates, she kind of does the same thing she did in the show where she creates her children, her twins out of thin air. But what she didn't realize at the time was she drew on, cause she's like this show, she didn't know how to really use her magic yet. And she's very chaotic, and she accidentally created them, kind of brought their spark to life by using fragments of Mephisto's soul. And when he found out about it, he took that back and they disappeared. And so she was so heartbroken that Agatha Harkness was like, here's a good idea, because this never goes wrong in comics or fictional storytelling. Let's just erase her memories and never tell her she had children and they existed.
Oh,
to help protect her from this pain, because that always goes well and does not come back to bite anybody in the ass.
Never.
It might surprise you to learn it did indeed come back and bite them in the ass, because Wasp said something thoughtlessly and it triggered Wanda's memories, and she remembered, wait, what the hell? I had kids. Like, what happened? And that's what triggered the whole House of M storyline, where she created a whole fake alternate reality. Because her powers were out of control and they were going to kill her, like basically to save the world. And so instead she created this whole fake alternate reality where she trapped all of the characters in the Marvel Universe and gave them their happy, perfect life. And then Wolverine figured, he was like, this is not right. And they finally figured out they were in an alternate reality. And anyway, long story short, TLDR, it ended with her saying the famous phrase, no more mutants, and basically like depowering 99% of the mutant population on Earth and pretty much almost extincting, like extinction event for the mutants. And they're still trying to rebuild today. So it was a whole big major storyline, and they really simplified it for WandaVision. But there are a lot of elements, like many of the storylines they adapt are very simplified for the movies, but they adapt the spirit of it.
Yeah, we're just getting a look at how powerful she is. Like we're the idea that she can, even the post-credit scene, this is full of spoil. We should put a spoiler. We'll put it at the beginning. It's fine.
For WandaVision?
Yeah. Her astral projecting while also still walking around and preparing tea is something that even Stephen Strange can't do. You see in the movies when he's studying, anytime that there's astral projection, the body has to rest. So the idea that she can do that and read the Darkhold while also having tea and chilling out in a log cabin lets you know how much more powerful than him she is, which Agatha refers to when she says even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to have to get me one of those flashy things from Men in Black, because my plan was to start WandaVision this week.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well,
so I am going to have to, my brain is just going to have to let all of this go through.
Well, think of it this way.
It's fine. It happens a lot.
Think of it this way, though. You actually might enjoy it more because you actually have context for this stuff now. You're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yes.
People are.
And it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I actually have to I want to sit and rewatch the whole thing now, having been through it.
The Mind Stone, too, I think is ultra powerful for that reason, and the most important because it explained, because this was one thing that bugged me in Endgame. And heading into WandaVision, this was a theory I had. I was wrong about how it worked out, but I thought it had something to do with the Mind Stone. I thought that when she killed Vision the first time in Infinity War, she technically did destroy the stone.
Yes.
I thought, because again, I was like, well, energy can't like be destroyed. I wonder if she absorbed the energy of the Mind Stone and that's what powered her up, because in Endgame, she was crazy powerful, like way more power. She got blipped, came back 5 years later, and all of a sudden she could almost take out Thanos single-handedly. And it was like, okay, that's going to have to be explained. Like, that's a pretty big power jump. Like, and so it does get addressed in WandaVision, which I won't spoil for you, but it does have to do with the Mind Stone, and it explains a lot about it. But it's really interesting because it's really responsible for a lot of the characters that are going to be very important heading into the MCU Phase 4.
I mean, it sounds like, look, as a person who has not seen WandaVision to know what power the Mind Stone still is wielding or still is holding over the MCU, even just with what we know from Phase 1 through 3 and the fact that it was Loki's scepter and Vision's power source. And it was what saved the day at the end of Ultron. It's what saved, or it's what was a linchpin moment in Infinity War and Endgame. Are we comfortable? Are there any challengers to the throne that it seems like the Mind Stone is sitting on?
I would say maybe the Time Stone, only because it was such an integral role in the Infinity Gauntlet arc at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But honestly, even before we started this, like when Ken invited me to do this, he was like, "Oh, it's which one is the best?" I'm like, "Oh, Mind Stone. I don't care. I'm going with Mind Stone."
Is it the one you'd most want to have?
It's a fun way of looking at it too.
I probably want to have the Time Stone because I'm still not real clear on what the Mind Stone does. And I feel like in my hand, like I just would not trust myself with the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Time Stone, I'd do stuff like I'd go back to like 1820 and give John Keats like just a bunch of antibiotics. Like just trust me, start taking these. Like start taking these like now. Just trust me on this, and I'd blip out of existence. Like I wouldn't do anything major. Like I wouldn't kill baby Hitler. Boring. Like I would do like random stuff like that.
Right.
But I feel like I'd really F up someone if I had the Mind Stone completely unintentionally.
No. That is the thing about the Time Stone though, that like all of these are sort of, weird nebulous ideas of a type of power and how it weaves in. Time Stone. That's a time machine. We all know how a time machine works. We've all seen dozens of movies and TV shows over the years about there being time machines and the ramifications of that. You mentioned something earlier that I think is great. In the way that these are MacGuffins, it doesn't really matter. Like, I remember Ben Acker saying years ago, a friend of ours, who's been on the show a couple times, that the least interesting part of any time travel movie is the mechanics of how the time travel works.
Yeah. I said they Doctor Who'd it, where he's like, it's wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And that's
fine. That's all you need. That's all I need.
Or not Doctor Strange, Doctor Who, the doctor who's like thousands and thousands of years old and can travel through time and space. That's how he describes it. Because he's like, yeah, your tiny human brain's not going to understand this. It's wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, period. And I was really waiting for them to say that line. And they didn't. But so I would rank it probably, Mind Stone would be like at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Time Stone and maybe the Space Stone would be like 2A and 2B.
And then the Ether is like 9th of the 6.
Yeah, the Ether's like honorable mention. Then there's probably the Power Stone is probably like 3.
Yeah.
Then the Soul Stone, I guess, because even though it was only one movie, at least it had a clear purpose.
Although Soul Stone was more of a plot device that we never really got to see what it did.
Yeah.
It was more about what you had to give up to get it.
Yes. And also it's the reason we no longer have Natasha, which I will forever be salty for because it should have been Hawkeye going over that damn cliff. But,
yeah, really. I mean,
yeah,
I'm with you on that.
I think you can make a case for Hawkeye. I also felt like I completely get that argument. I felt like it was a really smart end to her arc because that was her redemption. That was her sacrifice.
Logically, I get that. Like,
yeah, but
me, like, I know that. But the fangirl in me is just mad as hell. We'll probably never see the Winter Soldier Black Widow relationship from the comics.
Right.
Which I will die mad about. And then, yes, the Reality Stone is like not even the Reality Stone was a bad plot device and because it didn't even fully really fit into the movie. Like it never fully made sense. And also we don't really know what his powers are. So
it can turn Palm Clementeeth into ribbons. That's all we know.
Oh yeah. And like it makes abstract art.
And Dave Bautista bricks.
That's true. It does.
It makes Lego Bautista.
It makes weird, like turn of the century, like Art Deco, like impressionistic or post-impressionist art.
Yeah. It turns everyone into a Picasso. That's what it does.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like, look, we've been utilizing your brain for this show for 5 years now. It's nice to do it directly because when we have you on and do it directly, we not only determine which is the best of the 6 Infinity Stones, we even get power ranking of the top 6 or top 5 with our honorable mention of the Ether.
I feel like the Time Stone and Space Stone, some fans and listeners might have arguments about that because I would kind of rank them the same because the Space Stone is really important in the beginning of the MCU. The Time Stone is really important at the end of the Infinity Gauntlet arc. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I rank them on the same level, but people might disagree with that.
No, anymore. They can't. No, this is definitive for all time.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll take care of that right now. People of the world, the best Infinity Stone of the 6 is the Mind Stone. It's created heroes. It's created villains who became heroes. It has been a scepter. What are the other ones? Was it a scepter?
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. It influenced a freaking demigod.
Yeah. It
That's
turned
pretty cool,
Loki into a murder zombie, sort of. He's much more aggressive than he is in any of the other films. Because he
looked
prefers
like
to
a
work
really
in the
bad
margins.
flu. It gave him a really bad flu.
It gave him the flu or flu-like symptoms. We don't know. He didn't refuse to see a doctor.
He looked
during
like
Avengers.
the people look at the beginning of The Stand when they get capped rips like in the first few hours.
So that's what makes it the best stone. It is the most important and continues to be important. The ripples of the Mind Stone continue to be felt across the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that is why it's the best Infinity Stone, asked and answered, which means nobody can argue it anymore.
That's right. It's all done.
Oh, it feels so good to put a pop culture argument to rest, to know that never again on the internet. The internet is now free of that. You won't see anybody talking about it ever again. Yeah. Alisha Grauso, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. I'm always willing to talk movies and nerd stuff. So,
well, you'll be back then. You just signed on to return at some point.
We can do a definitive ranking of the different universes in the multiverse.
Oh, this is terrifying, you guys. I'm so scared.
Oh, we could introduce Mark to Battle World. It'd be a whole thing.
Is this when you two both try to kill me?
So it's a whole thing from the comics where it's like this whole, all these different realms in the Marvel universe that kind of ended up getting smushed together on the same map. So it was like, imagine all these alternate universes and stuff like all together, and
then the Capcom characters show up.
Yeah, and it's like all battle world, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Oh my goodness!
Somehow the Undertaker from WWE is there.
Of course, he's everywhere. Dead man walking. Alisha, where can everybody find you online? Anything you want to plug? The floor is yours.
You can find me. Twitter is probably the place where I'm most active, at AlishaGrauso.com. And my name is weird, so I will spell that ALISHAGRAUSO. You can pretty much find me around the internet on that name, since again, it's so weird. It's easy to Google. Screen Rant, Atom Tickets. I have other bylines around the web too. Some on Marvel. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have a bona fide expert on the show.
Thank you, guys.
I'm so excited that you could come and play. This topic is closed, but there are many more topics to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets, or
you can email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or go to our Facebook group. Talk about your favorite Infinity Stones, past, present, and future.
What?
Facebook.com/groups/We Got This Podcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And of course, thanks to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving us a chance to sit down and talk about, obviously, we're huge MCU fans. Obviously, we wanted to get an expert on. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned. Audience supported.